All right. At the very top here, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Before we actually move into the first item on the agenda, I just want to remind board members. Oh, Gaston, can't do that, dude. That's not fair. Barry, if you need to send it to good mode.
How do I do that?
Just click on the upper right hand corner there.
Oh, right here.
Right there. Yeah,
Alright, gallery.
Oh, he's already gone.
We lost him. Come and gone that quickly.
So I just want to remind board members, please, when the invitation goes out that asks whether or not you're going to be able to attend in person or not, number one, please respond. So we had some board members that just didn't respond at all. And please let us know if you're going to be remote or in person, because for those folks, for those meetings that we're having in person, we count the number of heads that say they're going to be here to inform what we're going to order for food, right? So when you don't respond, or you don't let us know that you're going to be here in person and then end up being, you know, either remote or vice versa, it could screw up our food order. So please make it a practice of responding. With that, we're going to move on, and the first item on the agenda this evening is to welcome our new board members. Welcome, new board members. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining the VSBA Board of Directors. Why don't just give everybody a brief chance to introduce themselves. And the easiest thing I think for me to do is I'm going to start online. And I'm going to start with. There's nobody new on. Because I was looking online, I was like, what, there is nobody new online. So why don't I start here local in the room? I'm going to start with Michael. Michael, could you let us know? Most of us already know you, but a little bit about Mike.
Yeah, Michael Inners. I'm the chair of the Champlain Islands Unified Union School District. In various roles as we've reorganized a few times since 2005. So that's 3 years out of law school. I should tell you that I'm an attorney also, and spent about 25, almost 30 years in the software industry before that. Also at 8 years on the Hill. Waiting for Senator Feingold.
Doing software.
No.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome to the VSBA board. I'm going to go back down to Diane, which is, we're going to consider you new.
That's great. It's what's old is new again. What's new is old again. Hi, I'm Diane Person-Glitman. I'm from Jericho, Mount Mansfield School Board. And I'm also a school nurse by day in a different town than where I'm a board member. So I'm in schools every day and taking care of our kids. Been a pediatric nurse for a long time in a bunch of different roles. So I've been on VSBA before, so this is my third time coming back. And forward to the statewide conversation. That's pretty much all I need to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Martina, the board member at Northwest, which as of a couple hours ago will stay as Northwest. I don't know if anyone following. There was a merger potentially between Mount Abe and us, and it went down. I don't know what Mount Abe's district voted, but we went down almost 3-1. So yeah, it was 2,000 no's and 770 yeses. So we'll have to figure out other ways to stay afloat. But I've also been part of the healthcare negotiations with Adrian, and we'll be quickly talking about the governance standards, which I helped work on. And I'm doing this.
Thank you. We've got a little bit of time, and it's not all about just our new board members, because our new board members might not know all the existing board members. So I'm going to start with Nancy.
Okay.
I know you're put on screen. You didn't even realize it was going to happen.
I know, I didn't. I was gonna say. I'm Nancy Russell, and I'm a board member from Hartford School District down in in Hartford. Been on, I can't remember exactly. I think I've been here. This is my third term. I used to do early education and then I retired. And so now I just serve on a whole lot of boards and still be really involved with kids.
Cool, thank you. Kara.
So I'm Tara Sweet. I'm on the Franklin Grand Isle representative. I am the chair of Fletcher Elementary School and the current chair of Franklin West. We rotate every year, so it's Fletcher's turn. This is my second, I think, term. Starting to blur together. By day, I'm an accountant, 3 daughters that 2 in college, 1 still in high school.
Thank you. Laura.
Flora Diaz-Smith, I'm from Washington Central Unified Union School District. I'm the chair of that, and I also put in the new Career Center board, which is another member for us now too. And what else was I supposed to say?
What are you supposed to say?
Yeah, I'm not gonna say how long I've been here, but this is the board that keeps me sane, and it's the board that makes me a better board member. So I appreciate everybody around here.
I'm David Chandler. I'm from the BRSU, Bennington Rutland Supervisory Union, and with Peconic and Green. I work alongside of Jim, have that privilege. I'm not sure how many, I haven't been on the board that long, a couple of terms, and yeah, that's all you need to know.
Thank you. Bart, we're doing introductions, especially for the new folks, but.
All right, great to be here, Bart Bazio. Representative for the Memorial North Supervisory Union. We also have the Green Mountain Technical Career Center there as well. I'm serving on my second 3-year term on the school board there, and during the day, I'm a finance director at Cox Automotive. So as you may have heard, dealer.com, it's one of the subsidiary companies where I got my start actually with the company. 3 kids, two just starting in college, freshmen, twins, and my youngest is a freshman in high school. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm gonna scoot down this way, Jim.
Okay. David got me started. Jim Salzgiver, Peconic and Green Regional School District board member, also chair of the Bennington Rutland Supervisory Union. Been doing that for a while, enjoy it. So, decided a number of years ago VSBA was a good thing too. I've been serving as treasurer over the past year for the VSBA. And I also actually am the VSBA rep to the Vermont Pension Investment Commission. So Adrienne.
I'm on the Mill River Unified Union School District. I started on the Shrewsbury School District 20-something years ago and moved into the merged district. I was also on our high school district. I'm on Stafford's board, which is our regional technical center. I'm serving on the Health Commission with Mark. Health Insurance Commission. I have 3 boys, 2 of whom are married, and by April we should have 3 grandkids. Right now we have 1. Big spread.
Awesome. Let me go online and Mark Schauber.
Hi, so I'm Mark Schauber from River Valley's Unified School District and Wyndham Central. As my full-time job, I run Vermont's first EMS Academy down here in Newfane, Vermont.
Thanks, Mark. Colleen.
Hello. Sorry I'm not with you tonight, but glad to be able to join you online at least. I'm Colleen McKinnon. I've been a board member for over a couple of decades. I've been on this particular board since right before the pandemic, so was able to meet a few people face to face. Look forward to being face to face again. My day job is I am a consultant for higher ed.
Thank you. Dan MacArthur.
Hi, everybody. I have been on this VSBA board for probably, I'm going to say maybe 6 years. I don't know. They do blend together. I'm glad to see I'm not the only one who has that issue. Been a school board member for probably 30 or more in the Marlboro School District. And we have 2 grown children, 4 grandchildren, and my wife and I run a small farm.
You, Grandpa Gaston.
Hi, all. I'm Gaston Bathalon. I'm the chair of the Troy School District, so right up on the base of Jay Peak and right on the border with Canada. And I'm also the chair of the North Country Supervisory Union Board. And let me see, my day job really is as a retiree. I retired out of the Army after a 30-year career. And so I keep myself busy with a number of different boards. That's what I have. Over. Thanks.
You guys will get used to the Army.
Right.
Take Gaston out of the Army, but you can't take the Army out of Gaston. Everything is over. Senator Gulick.
Thank you, Neil. Senator-elect, is that, am I set? Yeah, okay.
Been elected, please. Been elected. Maybe not seated, but you've been elected.
Not seated. Okay, got it. Okay. Hello, yes, I am, I guess I'm Senator Gulick now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did not. I'm sorry I did not respond to whether or not I was coming tonight. I was hoping to be there in person. I apologize. I decided in the end that it just it would have been a little too much for me tonight, but I hope to see everyone in person at our next meeting. And I'm on the Burlington School Board. I'm the clerk of the Burlington School Board. We had a big victory yesterday with our school bond. It was an amazing night, as you can imagine. We really thought it was going to be quite close, and it turned out that it wasn't. So I feel like that's a big win for education, and I look forward to continuing being an advocate for public education in Vermont in Montpelier starting very soon. Also, a quick fun fact, Michael Inners was an esteemed member of my recount team in the primary election. So thank you, Michael.
You had it in.
And Mark Clough. Mark, tell us your grandfather.
Hi, greetings, everyone. Senator, I know you put a lot of work in. Congratulations. That didn't come easy. I enjoy students in public schools. I'm a big proponent of public schools and what they mean and public funding. So being on this board has been very rewarding. I'm chair of the Peacham School Board, and I'm chair of the Caledonia Central Supervisory Union, which is 9 schools and some ridiculous number of towns due to Act 46. And I do really enjoy this work. Over.
Oh. All right, you started the trend. I'm going with the assumption that most everybody knows our wonderful staff at the VSBA. In the sake of time, it's not because you guys are not valuable. It's because of time. I think I might move on in the agenda. And with that, I am actually going to move on to the report from the Task Force on Governance Standards. Mark was the chair of that committee, that task force, that group. They did some excellent work. The work is included in your packet tonight. You'll notice on the packet, we've got information, discussion, and board action. I believe tonight we are looking for action from the board to actually approve this to head on to the secretary so that it can begin the rulemaking process. But I want to turn it over to Mark for an opportunity to just go through what's included in your packet.
So I hope this, Michael was on this and huge kudos to Phil, who really ran the thing, since this is really his entire life. We dove in for a couple of months and he's spent decades doing this, so I'll take all of the blame and he can get all the credit. So we met 4 times. This came fast and furious because of what happened in the last legislative session. One small part was that they wanted to try and create some sort of basic standards of governance for school boards to try and have sort of a basic playing field. Everyone should follow these sort of recommendations, rules. And we met the first time, had no idea what was going to happen. And from the start, the entire task force was pretty much on the same page. let's get some really basic things on some sort of paper without too much, this is what you must do when you must do it. Just, you should evaluate your superintendent. How you want to do that, it's up to you. But it's a good thing to do that. So we worked together. We had, like I said, 4 meetings. The last one was at our gathering a couple weeks ago at Lake Maury. Kind of created 3 buckets, which was based on sort of what Secretary French thought we could do. So we followed his lead since it's going to him. We didn't want to go too far afield of what AOE might want to see. They wanted just some very basic bullet points, not draft legislative language. The process is now going to go, well, goes to us. You decide whether or not to push it to AOE. AOE then plays around with it. Hopefully they'll come back to us if they have questions or concerns that we can help tweak, and they won't start messing with it. And then it goes to state legislature, and then through the session, it'll go to the review or rules and regulations and possibly become something, which then comes back to us. And the entire task force was sort of half warned that we may be reconvened to figure out how to then teach school boards how to follow the rules that they've now been put in place to follow. I'm not somebody who likes to read what's already there, so I can go through what's there, but if everyone's kind of already skimmed it and you just want to jump into questions or concerns or variations, I can start.
I have a question.
Yep.
What have you gotten any indication as to whether these are going to be advisory or whether they're going to be strict rules, or so we don't know yet? Because I mean, some of this stuff I know, my word. I'd love to see them do it, but I mean, maybe there's something.
It's really gonna come down to what Montpelier decides to do, and you know, there might be senator who can
So they didn't.
call for her.
You're feeling the pressure.
So my sense of what legislation calls for, that these would become quality standards, like education quality standards, with roughly the same force.
So would that be State Board of Education probably ultimately, you know, putting them in place, or the other guess?
The law says that it's the Agency of Education that's doing this rulemaking, not the state board.
Yes.
I was just curious as to whether or not there were other states or other sources that you compared with before creating them.
We looked at research from Washington State, Texas. We had an expert. Bill, where was Ivan from? Montana?
Montana. And we looked at national standards as well.
And did you find that my second question was, were they more rigorous, lengthy, et cetera, than what we have come up with?
They have become such, which is what we were trying to avoid.
Okay.
So especially Texas, and Phil can speak to this more, but you know, his concern is, he used to work down there, is that every time the legislation seems to meet, more standards and more tweaks and more narrowings happen, which makes it harder and harder and harder. So what we were trying to do is be as broad and expansive, just giving, these are best practices. These just make sense to do. You should have some continuing education so that you understand what it is you're going to create a budget on. And you know what your students have done, so you know what you want them to do. But what it is that you should focus on is up to your board and what your district is and what your community needs. We don't want to tell you, you have to understand your literacy rates for the last 5 years, because that might not be the most important thing. We did kind of set it into the 3 buckets of sort of why, how, and what, and broke down into the detail and just tried to think about what we wanted, what we thought a board should know and understand, and kind of left it at that. Are there any changes or concerns that anyone saw that?
Or go ahead.
I just had a quick question in the preamble paragraph, just for, since we were doing a lot of work with facts today, there's, and I know that this is specific, because it's just governance standards, if there's any way to then outcomes that we just sort of puts it together, that either a student educational outcomes.
Right.
Because this is why we're doing it.
Laura, I think they're asking you to speak louder.
Oh,
can
if
hear
we could find a way to have educational outcomes, and I know you guys spend a lot of time on that, but sort of how do we link at least in that first paragraph, like all of what this does is,
Right, and I think what's probably going to happen, I don't
yeah.
read AOE's mind, but at the same time we're doing this, the educational quality standards are also being revised,
being
rewritten,
revised.
and they're coming at the same time. And in our last meeting, we had a couple of people come and say, you really should try and link those together a little stronger. And so we did make some language changes, bringing in more stronger force on equity wording and
Yeah.
of that. And we actually had it in there, but we tweaked words, so it made it a little bit more standoutish. So the preamble is really just based on what we were doing, but I think that they will. And that's when I say I hope that AOE comes back to us and says, hey, what did you, we thought about doing a list of definitions and then said, do we really need to define school board? Do we really need? But if they come back and say, we don't know what this word means, what are you using it as? Then we can work with them. And if they would like to try and better integrate student, then we can do it at that point. But we didn't try and feed them more than what was being asked of us.
Go Michael first. Okay. Yeah, also, in parallel with this, there's two other drafts being generated, not by us. One is financial standards and one is facilities. There may be others, but those are two I know are in process. That are gonna become, integrated with this later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing, I really like it's general and you're, giving guidance and all that. I think that's really positive. I think, one just thought, is that, even though we're asking, suggesting that each district should do their own thing and all, making it extremely clear that they should actually produce a written document that shows, like, when they set goals, put them down in writing so people could actually see them.
And we have started creating a repository of examples. So a lot of the stuff that my district does, we've got copies of them. There's a number of other task force members who hold some of their examples of reports and charts and spreadsheets. So like when we do have rules, and we come back to figure out how to teach this to boards, we'll be trying to give them.
Worry about, so many districts, yeah, we do that. That's okay. And it's like.
And that was discussed in the task force, like where do we balance that? And sometimes maybe just saying, yep, we do that. And they did it, and that's fine. But it really is going to come down to how the Montpelier decides what is their rule. How are they going? Are there going to be any teeth, or something like this would be really good to do?
Don't you think, some teeth aren't all bad, but when it comes from up here. That's a little scary. Let me let Sue wanted to comment.
Yep.
My understanding was that there was a possibility that a certain number of districts would be audited each year on these by the Agency of Education. I think that is the intent.
Wow. Let me go to Dan MacArthur's got his hand up.
Yeah, I was curious. I know that this was sent around as a draft for feedback from school board members. I'm curious as to how many of those you got and whether they were substantive and were and their feedback was incorporated into this draft. I'm just wondering about that.
I'll get a number back. Phil might have specific numbers, but I think we hit a sweet spot because we had comments coming back saying this is far too detailed and this is far too vague.
And
so
Mark,
okay, well, we're right where we need to be. So that we did get a lot of feedback. We did try and incorporate it. Usually when there was some confusion, we tried to clarify. A lot of the confusion though was there would be the first paragraph, and then we'd say, what do you think of the word usage for the guidelines? And they'd say, what word usage? You haven't given us anything. The thing you just read. That's the words. But they were looking for an attached document. And so we got a lot of comments that didn't realize what they just read was what were the actual words, even though the introductory paragraph said what is here is what it is.
Yeah, I will note too that Phil just dropped in the chat that this also was brought up at the regional meetings. And so there was feedback that was gathered there as well too, that was incorporated this. I know Colleen, you had a question in the chat. Did you want to verbalize that one?
Yes, I mean, overall, I think this document is excellent. I really like the simplicity of it. And it seems very clear. I was just curious about what the committee intended by annually reads foundational documents such as articles of agreement. And what does that require of a board? And how will the state know? What are we supposed to do with that? Just
We were
your
thinking
thoughts.
there's certain documents that, you know, a new board member might not know, or it's been a while since you looked at. You know, you consolidated back in 2016, and every once in a while something comes up, we'll start doing something. And a board member say, I don't think we can do that. And we go back and look at the articles and say, you're right, we're not allowed to do that. It's also good for board members to have a basic understanding of their master agreements with their teachers and their staff. It's good to understand the transportation contracts when you're deciding to do budget. So just that you should be familiar with the big picture items that impact what you can and can't do or how you do it. It just seemed, I don't know that there's a way to track that. You can say you did or you didn't. If you start doing things and it turns out they're illegal, then you probably didn't do it. But we just thought it was important in some way to understand your foundational existence so that you know what you should do moving forward.
So if I could follow up, would the intent be related to board education and the requirement for so many hours of professional development that perhaps that's part of an annual retreat, but it gets put into annual goals for board education?
Something along those lines.
Yeah, thank you.
And again,
Really
that's gonna
good
come
work,
up
team.
how the board, how any individual board wants to structure it. Maybe that's something that you do at your March meeting after town meeting day as the first thing. Let's everyone take a quick look through it, or it's the new board pack, or it's, you know, over Christmas break when we're not doing anything because we only had one meeting, everyone take time when you want to get away from your family because you just had enough. Go read the articles because it'll be asleep.
And if I just like, because I want to be clear, like the guidance that we had from AOE was not to spend a whole lot of time on the execution of these things, but more what they were, right? And so I think that you see the focus here in this document are those standards, those benchmarks. And as Mark sort of indicated early on, how a district does that, you know, it could be individualized.
And we are assuming somehow that VSBA is going to put together, just like they do on other things. And if a board says, hey, we need some help, what do we do with these new rules? That maybe there's an online video, or maybe there's a workshop, or maybe it's a breakout at next year's annual meeting, something of that nature where boards could learn how to do it or what to do, or if they have questions, we don't understand part 3, like, oh, it just means this. Oh, okay, no problem.
Yeah. Any other questions on the draft standards?
Did I miss anything, Phil?
Mark, I think you did a great job. This, you know, on the real positive high level, that the state has decided that what school boards do matters when it comes to student outcomes. And so this is a good opportunity. It's a dangerous opportunity because these things do grow over time as people find you know, one more thing. So the task force worked really hard to keep things simple. The words were very thought through. In the first one on governance priorities, they really wanted to see that include academic progress and student well-being. And we kind of, you know, went out to some different words and we came back. They just kept coming back to that. That's what they, you know, resonated with the 11 task force members. So even though they only met 4 times, they really took this seriously, and it was neat to see.
And I will add, I mean, the group consisted of board members from all 11 regions. on the task force. So we had some pretty broad representation, and the good news was, you know, while it included some of the people that you see sitting here at this table, it wasn't everybody that's here at this table. So we did reach out and had input from folks that, you know, maybe didn't normally participate in this sort of thing. So I thought it was for the amount of time that we had to sort of spin this thing up and to get the work done. Kudos to, you know, Mark and Phil and the whole team for getting us to this point. I think this was great work in a very short period of time. So if I just get some clarification, we want the board to accept and then authorize the executive director for these on to the secretary this evening.
Yeah.
So if anybody was listening to that,
So moved.
that's the basis of a motion,
Second.
right?
Yeah.
Well, wait, so I can't be the one to make.
Accept the proposed governance standards and authorize the executive director to forward them to the secretary. Citation.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
And
All right.
Who was the motion? I'm
The
sorry.
motion was by Floor. Second by Jim Salzgiver. Any discussion? Any discussion? Yeah, wait, two guys from T and G, man, tried it out.
Oh, okay.
No, we're gonna give it to Jim for now, and you guys gotta have a little conversation during dinner. Any further discussion on this? And just a reminder for folks, while it seems like the end of a process for us here tonight, it's actually just the beginning of a process as this thing gets inserted into the rulemaking process. So we'll keep our eyes on it at that, because things can change at that point.
Separate, is there any way for us to become aware of what the, you know, as Michael was saying, on finance and on facilities, they're doing similar process? Is there a way that we can find out what the status is of those guidelines that are being developed?
The financial and the facilities, we know that Secretary French spoke with the state board about a schedule to do that. And it was supposed to be quite ambitious. But we haven't seen any drafts yet. I think we were supposed to get a draft sometime in the month of November.
Is that being done by the AOE, or were they outsourcing to some extent as well?
They were working a little bit with the Vermont Superintendents Association, I believe. But they weren't really outsourcing it in the same manner that they did with us.
Any further discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor then of accepting this and having Sue send it on to the secretary, please raise your hand and leave it up so we can get a count. That looks to be unanimous by
Yeah, I think it is unanimous.
my count. All right, Mark, thank you so much for getting us to this point. We really appreciate it. I know that your agenda says it's time for dinner, but I'm looking at the clock and I think we could squeeze in one or two things before we break for dinner. I need you to work for it, okay? Sorry, Carrie.
Working two computers here.
Stomach was grumbling, I'm sorry.
I'm assuming that's not.
That's exactly what I was looking for.
Oops. Yeah.
Okay, we didn't drop Zoom in case you're wondering.
Oh, no, I just unplugged it while I.
Yep,
did
it's
this.
still here.
And I didn't know if I needed to do this or not. That's unfortunate. All right, and I think for Zoom, I think I'm gonna share my screen. And then in the beginning. And I can probably back in. Look at that.
Oh, master of technology.
Yeah.
Oops.
So this is a presentation on the role of the VSBA board. It's going to look familiar to all of you because I give this general presentation at the beginning of each, well, we have new board members come on in November every year. And I did with Neil an orientation for our 5 new board members, and we went through this already with them. So I'm going to go through this, you know, a little bit quicker than I normally would if it was all new information to all of you. But there's some good reminders in here that are just like a school board should take a look at its foundational documents every year. This is sort of some foundational information about the VSBA and the VSBA board. So the first thing to know is that the VSBA is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. You can see the purposes for which it was organized in and incorporated in 1961. It's governed by the board of directors, all of you. And we have bylaws that if they're modified, they need to be modified by our membership. The general standards for nonprofits are set out in Vermont law. That's on the next slide. So they're covered in Vermont law. Oops.
That was weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. So a director is required under the law to discharge their duties in good faith with the care of an ordinarily prudent person in a like position, and also in a manner that they believe to be in the best interests of the corporation. We'll go on to the next slide, Karen. In 2016, the VSBA board adopted a code of ethics, and that has clear expectations for board members and a process for resolving issues at the board level. It tracks Vermont statute and case law governing the 3 duties of nonprofit boards, which we're going to go through. Can you? There you go. Okay. So board members must take care of the association by ensuring prudent use of the assets. Also provide oversight, ensuring that the activities advance the VSBA's effectiveness and sustainability. Really important is to make decisions that are in the best interest of the association, not in any individual self-interest. And that would include a personal and financial interests. And also avoid taking actions that compromise the authority of the full board, just like you wouldn't do that with your school board. You wouldn't think that you had authority as an individual to do something that is actually the authority of the board. It's the same concept here. It's important to ensure that the VSBA follows applicable laws, follows our bylaws, and that the board conducts itself in accordance with the policies. And those are all provided to you in your handbook, which we gave to all of you tonight. And if you are participating online tonight, we will mail you your handbook. And finally, not to engage in activities that harm the association's ability to pursue its mission. And as you know, we just had our membership pass a new mission for the association at the annual meeting. There's a state conflict of interest law for nonprofit boards of directors, and VSBA board members are bound by that law. If you think you have a conflict of interest, you need to declare the nature and the extent of the conflict and also any appearance of a conflict. And then you would abstain from voting and also from participating in discussion on the issue that gave rise to the conflict. We have this slide in here about what is an association, because we kind of talk about what is really the role of a VSBA board member as a regional rep. You can go on here to the next one. And the key question really is, whose interests do you represent? Is it the region or a component of members that sent you, or the association as an organization? So transparency and trust in governance, which we, we're the State School Boards Association and people look to us to have good governance. Occurs when board members understand the difference between representative for versus representative of. So if board members believe they're representative for, they see themselves as the elected representatives of a particular constituency, and they voice only the self-interest and the opinions of that constituency and vote on behalf of that constituency's interest. As opposed to if they view their role as ensuring that the views, beliefs, and values and self-interest of the constituencies that they know best are on the table, they're part of the conversation, that's considered to be representative of. So in that case, board members are voicing the interests and opinions of those they know best, but they vote on the behalf of the best overall interest of the organization. Wanted to also make sure you know that the VSBA bylaws define your role. The board's responsible for the oversight of the organization, has to ensure that there's a clear vision and goals, which you just went through a strategic planning process and updated that. That we're fulfilling the mission, it's fiscally sound, and have a strong connection with membership. And then another really important part of the regional representatives that we are going to focus on strengthening is your liaison relationship with the boards that are in your region. So promoting their involvement in association activities and services, and also hearing about their concerns and input on matters of public policy. So regional rep communications, the email addresses of association members that are in your region will be or have been sent to you. Will be sent to you. Carrie sends those to each of the regional reps, and it's a spreadsheet that has all of the contact information for the board members in your region.
And it's a shared spreadsheet, so when you get it, bookmark it, and the data on it will change, but the link will not change.
So she updates it when there are changes in board membership. So you should, if you access it, you should always have the most up-to-date information. One really important piece of information that I want to stress is that please, when you are communicating with your region, ensure that you copy me and Neil on those communications so that we know, first of all, that they're happening, but we also know what's getting communicated, and try to have some consistency in what's getting communicated around the state. And also, it would be great if you could send an introduction email to your region at some point in the next month or so, and make a plan for some type of ongoing communication and outreach with your fellow representative, because there's 2 of you in each region, hopefully. But there's 1 or 2 regions that we only have 1 right now, but for the most part, there's 2. And then the next slide, and then will be, I think this is the last one. This is the last slide about board member communications with staff. And just so everyone on the board knows, the staff report to the executive director, who then reports to the board. So if you have a request for staff to perform work that's outside of a task already assigned by the board or the executive director, it really should be first communicated to the executive director, and depending on what it is, I may need to communicate with Neil and have it added to a board meeting for full discussion by the board. The executive director should be copied on all email communications between board members and staff. And if you have any questions or concerns about the VSBA, please bring them directly to me, and that way they can be resolved as quickly as possible. And that is the end of that, those slides.
So I'm just gonna add just a little editorializing on this. So if you guys look in, so for those of you that are here in the room, right, you've got your new packet. And in the back is the policy areas, and in particular, I just want to highlight item D, which is board operations, and D1 covers the code of ethics. And under there, you'll see three things: duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience. And I wanted to bring these up because we've had some confusion in the past on some VSBA board members that they thought that this was something that the VSBA came up with. These three duties are actually all from Vermont state statute and apply to Vermont nonprofit boards of directors. So we didn't make this stuff up. It exists here for a reason, and it's Vermont state law. So I just wanted to make sure that folks understood that aspect of it. I also want to highlight too, in this same section, conflict of interest. I just asked that if folks have a conflict of interest, just let us know, when we get to that item on the agenda. Or, even preferably if you could let me know ahead of time, especially if you see it on the agenda, just so that we can keep track of things, so that we know where folks' interests lie. And if you have a conflict, it just makes it way more comfortable to do it that way than for one of your fellow board members to bring it up during a meeting and say, hey, I don't think Nancy should be talking about that stuff because did you know that she does this? Right? So it makes things a little bit easier at the end of the day. The other thing that I wanted to know too, that Sue, I don't think that you mentioned in this, is that while all of you and I as well, right, we belong to public bodies, school boards, the work that we do here at the VSBA, we are not a public body. And that was actually determined through a recent Vermont Supreme Court case. That being said, right, if you're going to use your school board email address to communicate back and forth with folks in the VSBA, that is likely a public record because you're using your school board email. I'm not suggesting that you do one thing or another, but if there's some sensitive information that work around the VSBA, if you're communicating with Sue or with other VSBA board members, you might want to consider which email address you use for that sort of material. The last thing that I'll focus on, and maybe just pound you guys a little bit on, is this introductory email to the folks in your region. So as Carrie mentioned, right, she's got the list of all the email addresses that you're going to need. What we really want folks to do is get together, and this is going to apply to everybody except to Gaston and to Martine, because you guys have got vacancies in your regions. You don't have another rep to team up with. Team up with your regional rep, send out an introductory email. And I can work with Carrie. We've got some sample ones if you want to see what, for example, like a sample intro emails look like in the past that we have sent out. We could probably share with you a couple of things. But let folks know who you are and that you are their voice on the VSBA board, right? And establish that line of communication so folks know that they can come to you, they can talk to you, and that you've got the vehicle to bring that information back to the full board. If I might make one suggestion on those emails. So this year, what we're trying to do is see if we can focus on increasing attendance to the annual conference. We had a great conference for those of you there. I hope those of you that were there, I hope you enjoyed it. But what we're trying to do is see if we can increase attendance. This time of year is a great time of year to let board members know, hey, if you're budgeting, you might want to budget for this sort of thing so that the monies are there when you're looking to go next fall. So maybe your introductory email might want to let board members know that as you're looking at your budget this year, this might be a great time to include some monies in the budget for board professional development. Sorry, that was a long rant.
We have some language you can share about that too, because we put that in the weekly.
Yes, I saw that. Perfect. So sorry, with all of that talking, do folks have any questions on your role as a VSBA board member? Yes, Diane.
So one question I have is, there are no minutes from these meetings that are public to other people. From
Yeah.
what I recall.
They're on our website.
They're on your website. Okay.
So is the video.
And so is the video of this. So, okay, that's fine, because I know that we asked in our board meeting to have a report on what's happening with the VSBA. And so it's really important to me that I'm careful about understanding where the boundaries are with information that I give out.
Yes, our agendas, minutes, and videos are all on our website.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say just, while we are not a public body, it doesn't mean that we are not operating as transparently as possible, right? So as
Okay.
Harry pointed out, yeah, you'll see agendas, videos like you're being recorded right now. So this will be up on the website when the meeting is over, right? If there's a sensitive object or a sensitive topic that we're going to be talking about, we can certainly address that. And I think it'll be pretty clear based on some of the discussions that we have, what things we think board members ought to refrain from talking about. But other than that, yeah, this is, you know,
Okay.
you're here at the service for your boards, and we want to make sure that you've got that line of communication.
Just want to be clear on that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else with questions? Our new board members are like, man, are we doing this over again? They already heard this once. So they were like, man, you're really driving it into it.
With regard to emails, is there a way to get a VSBA email?
We have talked about that in the past, and I think, right now there is no current plan, I think, to do that. Am I
I
right?
think there was an issue with our capacity, Carrie, right? To,
We are at capacity for.
Okay.
yeah,
So we could look to spend some more money maybe and change that, but right
Yeah.
now it's, it has not been budgeted for.
I would do that. I may instead, if you aren't gonna do it as an organization, I may just set up a Gmail account. and say,
That's exactly what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
When I was on Virginia City Council, I got hit with a couple of FOIAs and I made sure that I had a very separate email, so I didn't have all my personal emails sent to me.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you that don't do that in your normal board practice, right? Like I have a separate Gmail account that is my school board account, and that's actually set up through the district. All the district emails and stuff like that are going through there. If I'm just doing my own personal stuff, I do that on my personal email account, so the two don't get mixed up that way. It is a great way to keep them separate, so that when you do get that request, there's only one place that they can go for all the information that they need. All right. Now, how are we doing? We hungry now? Okay. The food is ready. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is great. Oh, sorry.
Resume recording. Okay, well, we're muted. We're on pause. The executive committee, Jim Salzgiver nominated Flora Diaz for vice president, and it was approved unanimously. Adrian Raymond was nominated by Jim Salzgiver for treasurer, and that was approved unanimously. Oh, Adrian Raymond nominated Jim Salzgiver for treasurer. And it was approved. We are currently counting votes for nominations for member at large. Martine Gulick nominated Mark Schauber. Flora Diaz Smith nominated Tara Sweet. And Jim Salzgiver nominated Suzanne. See, summarized it that quickly. Well, we're still counting votes, so.
You did.
Two of those three people will be members at large for the VSBA.
Don't have a vote for Mark.
That was supposed to be for Mark.
Did you say you didn't?
I don't have a vote for Mark Clough in my email.
Mark Clough, did you send a vote in?
He can also send you a message in chat.
You're on mute, Mark. Can't hear you.
Sue?
Of course, thanks. Do you want that by email or by message?
Send an email to Sue.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm only pausing here because Suzanne asked me a question, and she said, please use my first ballot, and I've only got one ballot for her, so I'm assuming that's her first ballot.
We have the ballots counted on the table, Sue, by the way. Do you want us to just give you the counts of those ones?
No,
Okay.
I want to make sure I've got this correct.
Okay.
Suzanne, was Sue's assertion correct? You're muted.
Sorry, I didn't hear what Sue said.
So you asked me a question, and then when you asked me if you're voting for one position or two. And I told you it was two positions, and you said, please use my first ballot. But I only got one email from you.
Oh, okay, well, let me
Now I've
resend.
got another one. Okay,
It just came in.
yeah, but so saying what the first ballot was, so, okay.
All right, thank you.
It just took a minute to come in, okay. All right. Still don't have Mark Clough though.
He's thinking about it. You can see it, just going.
It's in the outbox. It should be headed your way shortly.
Gotta get you on the list for broadband internet out there.
Please.
I'm gonna double check what I do have on, okay?
If you haven't had that awkward conversation with the other person from your region about who's gonna serve on the legislative committee, now would be a great time to have that conversation.
You're already on it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're the lucky person that serves in a region where the other person was already on the exec committee, then you're all. You're all, yeah.
Or then the way it work the other way. I mean, if the
Oh,
the
yeah.
region had an executive committee member, then the other person had to be on the legislative.
No, that's not how you just, that's. The board wrote the policy.
Well, there's no overlap,
Yeah, no overlap.
but you can see the overlap is okay, so if the executive committee is already on there.
But the president doesn't count as. An overlap.
There we go.
Nope. So Nancy, you and Amy better be.
Okay, Mark Clough, you
Fine, thank you.
voted for someone that wasn't nominated.
Okay.
So the choices are Mark Schauber, Tara Sweet, and Suzanne Buck.
Okay, okay, I got it. Okay, I got it.
Yep.
Yeah, my bad.
Okay.
Send it to the chat to actually view in the chat, right?
And
Yeah, I'm not on the.
But you're on the,
emails, I did, let's not,
Yeah.
let's not change it up the last.
Permanent record. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could just record it as a write-in vote.
Golly.
Spoiled vote. Can all argue about it.
Overdone. I'll look for 3.
Yeah, really. Those are fun to count.
Or my, nothing to mark, write it in and then write in somebody who's already on the ballot.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
we're writing somebody who's not legally allowed to hold the position.
That happens.
I had write-ins where people were voting for each other.
Oh, yeah. We had a few people in town, we voted, you know. Town clerk got voted for something.
You know, the classic, oh, Santa Claus and Wiley.
Mickey Mouse, they're so funny.
I
bet. Someone,
Yeah.
I think it was for sheriff, there's a big Franklin County to do about sheriff and someone wrote SpongeBob.
They always put a little thing in our, you know, our little monthly newspaper. Folks, don't do write-ins unless you're serious about it, because it takes a lot of time, and we have to write down.
Exactly,
Right, I mean, you don't
yeah.
write down Mickey Mouse, but all the other names, you know, at least you can get.
Oh, no, we have to write down even if it's Mickey Mouse or SpongeBob.
Oh, so you
Yeah.
can consider that a spoil.
Well, they are, our
Yeah.
town makes us write it.
Yeah.
Your clerk is following.
They're in the kitchen?
Yeah.
Oh, they're in the kitchen, okay.
Our clerk doesn't, she's like, you gotta have them all, if it's written, we have to write it.
Our clerk treats it as spoiled.
Yeah.
I think under the Secretary of State rules,
It's an
if
imaginary
it's
person.
fictitious or debt, you don't have to do it.
Yeah,
I'll tell them.
whether she believes it or not.
Exactly. Oh, no, she probably will. They'll go back.
You're saying there is no Santa Claus?
No, I'm talking, we had, and
But he doesn't live in that town. You don't have to-
But I hope we're not being recorded.
It's okay.
I'm gonna hear it.
I get it.
Anyone else?
Also for folks that are here in the room, you've got the little mileage voucher sheet. Please fill that out before you leave tonight. You can get reimbursed for the trip up and back.
Or down back.
Or down the back, sorry.
Yeah.
I always view the world from my vantage.
Over.
Sign of a presidential.
Or-
Yeah, 8 miles, so that was a little more than 8 miles.
That's all exactly now.
I'm almost the same.
Someone made like drums.
Yeah, I know we are. Anticipation's killing us.
For last night.
That's all right.
Jan and Mark have longer drives than me. But then they're sitting,
Not
but then
today.
they're sitting there.
I think that's the main reason I'm not there tonight, is just a long, long ways and it's longer coming back.
See how that works.
There's a space for it on the positive. Makes it twice as far if you're not feeling good in Green Isle. People reacting.
With the direction you're spinning or weekends.
Mine is, do I take the notch and risk a tractor trailer being there? for 18
Oh.
months this year? Or do I just-
They've been putting the signs further out now.
Yeah,
so-
it's so.
It's amazing.
They're not close that down a little.
Not yet, they will when it snows.
First step.
It's actually late. You get any word, we're at the end of October.
Yeah.
So it's the CC0 between Shrewsbury and Plymouth
So what's funny is
yesterday.
they put that sign out further, but now if you don't know, then it doesn't make sense. It's like, what road is, well, I don't understand what you're talking about, because you know, it's like so far away.
The white smoke has risen from the kitchen and we have a result. I would like to welcome both Mark Schauber and Tara Sweet to the executive committee to fill the 2 member at large positions. So thank you, board, for getting us fully staffed with an executive committee. All right, now we move on to the legislative committee. I'm actually looking if folks are willing to just sort of step forward and have themselves appointed to that committee, rather than go through some sort of awkward election. And so we can go by region. And at least if I go down my list here, right, I think the first one that I would need is the Addison region.
I believe Suzanne has told me she's hoping to do it. I would be willing to do it as well. So if she wants it, she can have it. Otherwise, I'll take it.
Suzanne, some confirmation? You've just been nominated and accepted.
I don't mind doing it, but I'm not gonna beat Mark up if he wants to do it too, so I know we can't split it.
Yes, I will be engaged anyways. I have friends who are in the legislature and I get texts all the time saying, what does this mean? What's going on in paragraph 2? And so I end up watching it and I will be watching it now. So I'll be doing it one way or the other. I just won't be talking to all of you. If I'm not. So but you said something about it's kind of dovetails with your current job. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just.
So you guys have to come to a conclusion. We're all watching.
I've got Suzanne on my list unless I hear any objections. All right, no objection. I'm moving on. Bennington region, David Chandler, Jim Salzgiver.
Right on.
Jim's already on. That's because Jim is a member of the executive committee. Central Vermont, we got Floor. Eastern Chittenden. Eastern Chittenden. Diane and Colleen.
Colleen and I have chatted and I'm gonna be the volunteer for that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Tara Sweet, welcome to the legislative committee.
It's Franklin Brandau, right?
Gaston, have you talked with your other regional rep about this?
Yeah, I drew the short straw, so I'm very happily will do it. Over.
And What is his region?
He is Kingdom North, so Gaston didn't have much of a choice. Mark Kaufman or Mark Clough? Mark Clough, you're the only guy that's actually attending this evening from that region, so you're gonna rat out your neighbor here or what?
What's the region?
This is Kingdom South.
So Mark will do it.
Mark.
Mark Clough.
Come on, man.
We have a
Mark
lot of marks.
Clough. So you meant to say I will do it.
I will
Right?
do it. I will
Right.
do it.
Nice, Mark Clough. Rutland area.
I had not talked to Lisa and she's not here either, so I'll volunteer.
You will volunteer?
I will.
Thank you, Adrian. Martine, you got a lot of competition for this one.
Western Chittenden.
Do I have to do it? My plate is kind of full, but I will if I,
So according to policy, yes. But then we've got the other policy issue to deal with, which could be, I'm foreseeing a potential conflict of interest. Right? And so I'm gonna do it this way. I'm gonna put your name down since you're the only name for your region until we can find another person to serve that vacancy in Western Chittenden. But we will keep a close eye on the conflict of interest piece. And I think what we're gonna need to do is sort of handle it as it pops up, if that's okay with you.
yes,
you know,
that sounds good.
Yeah, until or unless we can find another rep from your area that's willing to serve. And we
Okay.
would love to be staffed if we can, so.
Yep, I will keep looking. Thank you.
Sure. Mark Schauber, welcome.
That's what, for people that are watching, can you say what region it is?
Yeah, so Mark Schauber would be the Wyndham rep. Yeah, MacArthur gets a bye on that one. And then the last one is the Windsor rep, either Nancy or Amy, and it's Nancy. Okay. We are fully staffed then for a legislative committee.
Nancy, did you say?
Thank you. I will, I can send that full list of names out to Sue and Carrie so that you guys have got it. Folks, bear with us. Like, so this is literally the first year that we will have a legislative committee. This thing just got formed through policy last year. So bear with us. You know, it might be awkward, might be awesome. But either way, it's new for us, right? So we're gonna make the best of it, okay? Moving on then to the item that that I added to your packet after the packet had already gone out. We wanted to have a discussion on resolution number 4 that was passed at the annual meeting. David Chandler reached out to me requesting that we talk about this, and I let him know that I would add it to this evening's agenda, which I did. You all have a little bit of background on that I sent you to via email over the weekend. But I am going to let David have the floor for introduction of the topic. I will let folks know ahead of time, depending on how long this discussion goes. We may need to cut it off. We may decide to move it to a committee. Or we may decide to just push it forward to the next VSBA board meeting. But I at least wanted to get the discussion going tonight. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to David.
Thank you very much. So resolution number 4 was something that Jim and I had some discussions on, and I talked with Mark quite a bit. And he suggested that that we could give guidance if the board agreed. We could agree to give guidance on how to testify regarding resolution number 4 to Sue. So I have 3 points I'd like to make. And the first one is when you have a resolution or a policy or a law, it's really important to be clear on what you want to achieve. And at the annual meeting, when I canvassed people who supported resolution number 4, I found very strong feelings in support. Everyone seemed to believe that there are serious problems with Vermont's education funding system. there was a firm belief that the resolution number 4 is the best way to fix our education funding system so we can improve access to public education in Vermont. However, when I asked for the reasons people believe the system is broken, and when I asked their thoughts as to how resolution number 4 will fix it, I heard a very wide range of answers. They went from create a sledgehammer, presumably to bring representatives of the non-public schools to the bargaining table, possibly to shake up or even break up the current system. Another was give more money to all of our students statewide. Achieve equity is a third. All of our students should have the access they require. Keep the independent schools from lowering the ADM and causing the state to have an inaccurate picture of the true cost of excellent education. That was another one I heard. Make the non-public schools more accountable, especially financially. Gain control where needed, but don't worry, we aren't going after the historical academies. They will not be affected by this resolution. That was to me because I'm representing a group within historical academy. So we should have a very clear idea of what the problem is we are trying to fix, instead of agreeing that we need control of the education funding system so we can fix the problem. We should know the problem first and then know the solution. The second point I want to make is don't forget the local community. I think a lot of times we think that education is an assembly line. It's not. Education is more like a process where with a lot of engaged stakeholders, a lot of professionals and individuals that are being educated. So I definitely want my kids to do well. I think that's what everyone feels. But in reality, I think all of us here want all of our kids to do well, to achieve their full potential, or at least to have that opportunity. Public education should be a win-win proposition. I believe this is a good working definition of equity. It is not necessarily equal, but it can achieve equity. If the community has a say in what is going on, if the community takes ownership of educating its kids, if the community can marshal its resources along with its unique strengths, they will find the best way to serve all of their students. I believe that empowering the local community is a crucial part of the equation for providing our students with the best education possible. So going on to my third point, it is where did I put it? There it is. Let's practice what we preach. Let's take a policy like you did with the guidelines you provided. Let's take a policy governance approach to improving Vermont's education funding system. Instead of making a directive, I suggest that we practice what we preach. Instead of telling our schools and school boards what they should do, let's identify the few things they absolutely shouldn't do. Let them do their jobs. Let the teachers and the administrators and the school boards do their jobs. And then over time, begin a process of honing and refining. This allows each community to provide the unique benefits of that particular community and allows the community to take responsibility for its students working alongside the state. So to do that, I would recommend the 6 points as a starting point that were given in a resolution that was passed 5 years ago. Number 1 is do not discriminate or deny enrollment on the basis of race, creed, color, national origin, marital status, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. Operate with an open admissions policy, meaning that it accepts all publicly funded students on a space available basis. Employ teachers and administrators that have licenses or endorsements or certifications or accreditations required by professionals working in public schools. We might want to loosen that one a little bit, but be approved for special education services in at least 4 categories and arrange for special education services related to any disability category if required in an enrolled student's individual education plan. Administer state assessments and make outcomes data available to the public and provide free and reduced lunch to all eligible students. I see that as a good starting point, as a framework. And if we use that as a guideline, I think that would be a good way to begin tweaking the public funding of non-public schools or public schools and apply the same conditions to every program. So that's what I would suggest.
Thank you, David. All right, I see some hands up online, so I'm gonna go to Mark Schauber first.
So I just want to remind everybody that this resolution is not about changing the funding system in Vermont. That's what we did with Act 127, sort of. This was about accountability of public funds, so that any school that receives money from the education fund is as accountable for both quality standards, regulations, reporting, financial reporting, as any other school. In order to have equity across the state, all schools that are receiving money need to have the same requirements, regardless of whether they're independent or private, or public. They're receiving public fund dollars. I do believe that the approach that is in Resolution 4 is the best approach. I don't think that we should be going in and picking individual issues and items to address the legislature on this at this point. I think that there is definitely a conversation to be had about areas that the VSBA believes are of the greatest importance. But I'm concerned that the resolution as passed by the membership would be watered down way too much if we go and start trying to narrow it at this point. I think this is a much larger conversation. The conversation that I'd had with David and Jim was, at least from my perspective, was intended for us to sit down so I could understand more of what their concerns were. And for those of you who don't know, I'm the author of Resolution 4, just for get it out there. So yeah, I may have some more comments later, but I think overall that's what I have to say right now. So thank you.
Martine, you're next.
Yes, thank you. David, I just wanted to say thank you to you as well for your comments. I appreciated that laundry list too of reasons that folks gave behind this resolution. Folks kind of made some of those things up. They weren't necessarily in the intent of the original resolution as far as I'm concerned, and having spoken with Mark and then having sponsored the resolution, I think I have a pretty good sense of where it was coming from. But I also just wanted to say thank you for bringing up the equity piece, but I do want to just reiterate that we're talking about equity in the way school districts behave and in the way that they report their finances and the way they report how they spend. So it's not equity in terms of how money is used or the amount of money the school gets. It really just is equity in terms of reporting and behavior. So anyway, I just wanted to reiterate that and sort of second what Mark just said. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan MacArthur, go ahead.
David, I'm a little bit surprised because, we just sat with Sue as we looked at the duties and responsibilities of board members, and one of them was to be representative for, not of. And I understand that you did not vote in favor of this resolution, but honestly, I think that going, sort of canvassing people at a school board annual meeting is a little bit one of the things that we are probably not supposed to be doing as board members of this organization. So I would suggest that we move on from this conversation now, because I don't think that, this resolution passed, it passed by a substantial majority, and I don't like to see it revisited in this way.
Thanks, Dan. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the 6 items in L are important items, but they're by no means the only important. There's a whole raft of mandatory policies that we have to follow in the public school. And
Mike, could I just ask you to speak up a little bit?
if the policies are, if these really are important, they should apply to them and benefit all the students, including those that are independent schools. And there's also just a practical matter, from the education financing standpoint, which is always part of the background. When we pay tuition to a public school from our district, that money goes back in the education fund. It stays in the system. We pay tuition, particularly to an out-of-state school, but any private entity, that money leaves the education fund. But there's no accountability for what happens with any public school. There's a whole bunch of financial transparency that applies. You take a look at exactly where the money's going. That doesn't happen when it goes to an independent school.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, I just, since you brought up practical and all, I think from again, David and I come from a district, I don't think, Dan, that we're trying to, overrule the VSBA board and its resolutions. We're trying to continue a discussion on these items. And from a practical perspective, one of the key important points from, we live in a district where one of the historical academies teaches over 96% of our kids. And the continued existence of that entity in a way that, they work with us. And we have a lot of confidence and comfort. And they try to work with us to earn that confidence and trust in them. They've actually, they've made a lot of changes over the years to increase transparency and so we can get comfortable. And from our perspective, we just have you guys are talking about, well, wouldn't it be great if these things happen? The honest truth is, certain organizations like it's Burton Academy in our case, the things they're being asked to do with this new resolution, they view as threatening and difficult. And so we try to work with them to figure out a way to, from our perspective, what we're trying to do is, we have a system that's worked for a whole lot of years. We think it works well for our students. We're trying to make sure that we don't take a position that, could potentially make it difficult to continue in that system. So just so you understand, from our perspective, we are looking at it from our perspective, and it's a totally different perspective than most districts have. And, totally understand that not everybody, it's hard to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And a lot of you guys, I think, don't see, can't understand why we view some of these things, and people in our community view some of these things as threatening to our existing education system. But I just kind of urge you to keep an open mind on that. That's essentially what we're trying to do is, we are protective of the system. We think it has worked well, certainly for our kids for longer than we've had public schools. And so basically that's what we're trying to argue for, figuring out a way to accommodate an organization like that does provide public education for our kids, in our view. And also have it be fair to all the other school districts that don't operate in a system like ours.
Thanks. Colleen, you're next.
Yes, thank you. I want to go back to David's Chandler's original statement, and thank you, David, for bringing this forward. I really appreciate the framework that you started us with. And you started us with helping us see that we needed to first identify what the problem was. And that's what I heard in your preamble about you were hearing different perspectives of what the problem was that we were trying to solve. So what I heard, David, in your statement was an interest in taking time to really get a sense of what the problem is before the VSBA takes a position on advocacy. So thank you for doing that. And, I just also want to advocate for us as board members to open our ears and really listen to our colleagues in the state. I am a long-time proponent of public education, so I understand the concern about privatization, public versus private dollars. That's not a new issue for me. I do understand that I have a lot to learn from those people who have a different perspective than I do. And I encourage us as a board to model what it is that we are asking our students to do, to take the time to really listen to each other a little bit more. I think, where I'm coming to in this own deliberation in my own head is that we are more alike than not. And I'm not going to take a particular position at this moment or advocate one way or the other, but I just want to say thank you to David for bringing the topic forward and being brave enough to make the statement when you knew it was not going to be popular among the group. And my position really is to advocate for board members to listen to each other a little bit more, because we're going to need each other. This is a topic that's it's bigger than we are in the state.
Thank you, Colleen. Any other comments? Let me see if anybody else wants to talk first, since you've already gone.
Sure.
Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Like we said earlier, this is the beginning of the conversation, so I'd hate to truncate it at the start. I mean, it's going to be watered down. Other voices are going to come in and change it around. So to limit it before we even start talking about it, I don't think it's probably the best way. But the points that you made are what we can focus on. But I don't want to say this is the only thing we really need to talk about. But I'm sure that there's going to be differences of opinion that are going to whittle it down as the discussion happens.
Okay. Anyone else before I go back to David? David.
I'll keep it short. I was going to go through each of the points that different people raised. But, and especially being criticized for canvassing people before the resolution vote actually happened, and doing my job of understanding where people are coming from. So I found that curious, but I don't need to speak because Colleen did such a great job of summarizing what I'm really trying to do, which is create a discussion and an understanding that one size does not fit all, that Vermont has done a lot of very good education over the last 200 years. Maybe we've done a bad job recently, maybe our equity is not perfect, but we do community well. And we're a little afraid at the edges now from both sides. And I appreciate what everyone's saying about we need to be pulling together. Let's understand that we do community well. Let's listen to each other. We can give guidelines from the top, but it still has to be implemented at the grassroots. So how do we create an environment? And the non-public school funding has enabled us to create series of private schools and public schools that work really well together and that achieve results that we're very proud of as a community. So we're defending that, but we also think there are lessons learned in there that could be applied elsewhere.
Or
I was on anything but just down right. I agree with what Colleen is saying, that we have to talk to each other. I also think that as a board, we have a moral imperative of not just looking at Vermont, but understanding what public education really means as a country, as a nation. If we really just look outside of Vermont and put ourselves thinking what has happened in other places, so I would ask our the representatives that have, I went to private school, don't get me wrong, I know what it can do, I know what it can do in a country where public education has been underfunded and minimized, say that opportunities can be provided differently. So it's not like I don't support it, I know what it can do for people, but what it could mean for Vermont in the future is something that we have to like continue to put at the heart of it and try to separate yourselves of your history too, with just as us, we have to put ourselves in your shoes, get yourselves out of what it meant for, what it meant for your kids, what it meant for your community at large. The average young student in Vermont and what it means for the future of our voters in Vermont too. So that's the only thing left.
Thanks. Anybody else who hasn't spoken yet before I go to Martine for a second time? No. Martine, go ahead.
Thank you, Neil. I wanted to thank Colleen for bringing up the point about listening. And I also wanted to say, from my point of view, having been on this board for a few years, I actually think we do a great job of listening to each other. This is one of the best functioning boards I've ever been on. And I really enjoy the time I get to spend, usually on Zoom, with all of you folks. I also want to say it's a really important part of democracy to give constructive criticism and occasionally even, dissent. And I don't necessarily see that lack of agreement or, disagreement or dissension they don't mean that we're not listening. So I do just want to make that distinction. I really appreciate folks actively listening, but also I appreciate the pushback on occasion. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, Diane, go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna stick my neck out here because the conversation when I had been on boards was different. We didn't have maybe the same energy and the same interest around this particular issue. But I think what I'm stuck on is that I don't understand what's wrong with the be it resolved paragraph from resolution 4. I guess I just don't understand why that's a problem for any school in our state. So I'm coming from that point. I'm admitting right now, there's stuff I probably don't know. But all rules, regulations, policies, quality standards, reporting requirements, and laws regarding public schools must apply to any school that receives funds from the statewide education fund for any reason, for any purpose. It's kind of like that approved independent schools that we have already. So perhaps I need more education. Sorry. But I guess I just don't see the problem.
Any other comments? All right, so I'm trying to narrow down here what the ask is. And I'm wondering if you can help, because sometimes I've heard just continued discussion.
No,
Other times I've heard some, 6-point list.
that's the ask. The ask is that we start with a general set of guide. We practice what we preach. And we set a policy governance approach towards how we're going to report on this.
Well, I want to be careful. I mean, VSBA board does not practice policy governance, right?
Okay. But the principle of instead of being top down and trying to make one size fit all and doing that, you empower the people on the ground by giving it a framework, and you let them take over control.
So allow me to, can I play devil's advocate for a second? I guess I don't agree with the assertion that what we just did was the top-down approach. It was a resolution that was brought forward by a member district that was debated by members of the VSBA, so board members from all across the state, and then voted on that way. It struck me as just the opposite of a top-down approach. I mean, the resolution was brought forward from the grassroots, right? From a school district. It didn't come from, there were some resolutions that came from the VSBA resolution committee. This one did not, right? And so I guess I would counter that I don't think that it was a top-down heavy-handed approach.
The resolution itself came from the grassroots. That makes absolute sense, but the impact it has on every district that now takes funds and has to implement them and do the best it can for its community. The impact is, okay, it's very clear. We're being told we've operated this one way for 200 years, and now we have to change all of our rules. We have to, taxpayers already approved the budget, or they approved the allocations. And now you've got to vote members of the board. Now you've got to do other kinds of things that never were required in the beginning. So I'm sorry, I shouldn't say in the beginning. It's a different entity. So now you're changing something that's been working and you're not allowing it to adapt into the modern situation. That's what I'm afraid of. And
I guess my point of view on this is that the VSBA is adapting out of necessity based on a decision that the US Supreme Court made. Were it not for that,
right,
we would not be having this discussion. So the VSBA didn't come up with this out of the blue.
right.
And he didn't come up with it.
Right.
What is how to put the emphasis on the non-discrimination approach rather than on religious approach.
Yeah, and so I will be honest with you, David. Here's my hesitancy on that. Is that we've been down this road before, right? So I can look at Dan MacArthur, who is liable to say, right, we have done this already with Act 46, right? There was a portion of this state that did not like the position that the VSB had on this, right? And what they wanted us, and then Sue would offer testimony and we would get emails saying, I can't believe you said that, right? I'm trying to say, can we avoid that? And what I fear is what you put on the table heads us in that exact direction right now. Let me let you think about that for a second. I've got two hands up online, but I'm going to go to Adrian first because she hasn't spoken yet.
I was just gonna say, I totally respect the fact that your district has had an experience with an independent school that is wonderful. But I think the piece that I would still like the VSBA to speak to is that the change in funding is what precipitated some of this conversation. I'm paying part of I mean, whether your district gives more money than supports your school really doesn't matter. I mean, yes, and I find the conversations of we give more money than what we spend not good. Because that's just, I'm richer than you, so I can, it works for me, deal with it. And I'm really trying not to be confrontational on this. But I think this is a bigger conversation, and it's a conversation that has to happen. And the fact that some districts may feel a little bit targeted does not make it wrong to have the conversation and to have those feelings out there. Because what works for you may not work for everybody else. And we're all taxpayers and we're all citizens of the state. So those conversations have to happen. And I don't want it to be limited. The VSBA can only speak about a certain, within certain parameters. I think this is a huge conversation and there's many facets and it all has to get out there. And this may be the time for it to finally happen. It's been skirted for a long time.
Yeah, so let me do this. I'm going to go to Colleen, then Michael, then Mark.
Yes, I'll be brief. I just want to bring us back to what I thought the original ask was, and that was, now that the resolution has passed, what is the advocacy position of the VSBA? And we will be asked, well, specifically, what does that look like? And I do think that that requires some conversation among people with different perspectives of the issues to come together and see where there is commonality. I'm not hearing disagreement necessarily with the resolution and trying to withdraw that. What I'm hearing is, now that the resolution has been passed, what is the advocacy position specifically for the VSBA? I don't think we're there yet.
Thanks. Michael.
Yeah, I think it's a valuable discussion. But I do have a big problem with the specific ask here. It essentially boiled down, this ask is that we disregard the resolution passed this year and revert to a previous position, which was the 6 points from prior years. As if the resolution passed this year didn't exist. That's really what the ask effectively comes down to. And I don't think that's good practice for us to say we're just going to pretend that resolution didn't happen. We're going to go back to what we had 2 years ago. Find out it's past the 6 points. You know, I do think the valuable discussion, I don't think it's a waste of time for us discussing it and the complications of it, but I can't agree with what's being asked here is appropriate for this point.
Yeah, thanks. I go to Mark. Where'd you go? There you are. You're there twice, Mark.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, sorry, battery died on my computer. I switched to phone. I wanted to take a slightly different tact view of this. I think part of the problem is that what is required of our public schools feels very onerous and maybe burdensome in some ways. And I think if one thing we may want to do is take a look at what we believe should be changed or removed from the requirements for all schools across the board. But from an equity perspective, all schools that are receiving funding should have the same requirements. But we may want to change or attempt to change some of those requirements.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments? I am leaning on moving this forward to the December meeting as well. I'm not getting a sense of resolution here per se. And I would like to move it forward to the December meeting. Yeah.
So in all of the other resolutions that we passed with the bear we usually do not sort of micromanage our executive director, president that much. So what gives us some authority as a board? I know that this is complicated and these conversations have to happen, but until the questions start to come up at the state level, I don't know how we're gonna, and I know it's a complicated dance, but we hire our executive director, we elect a president, we elect an executive committee, and now it's the committee, and then guidance that is supposed to help to make it easier for our staff to be able to act upon our. So I just want us to be conscious about that we are gonna make it harder for them. It's not like they can't come back to us, but we're gonna make it harder for them to be able to be fast and nimble and act. And be able to have the conversations that are gonna be to have between other organizations. So I just want to caution us in what are we asking ourselves, because we're gonna tie our hands and not be effective.
Thank you for that. Mark, is that hand up from before? I think it is. Yeah. This is your phantom computer that is still in here with us.
It's hand up.
The computer is DOA, so you can get rid of that hand also.
Diane, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I really agree with what Flo said. I would love to have this big discussion about what this resolution might mean and the pieces that the education, that I may need to catch up on to understand everyone's different perspectives. But I think that's a really key point, is that, not micromanaging everything that the executive director says.
That is just one quick. Yes, Jim. Comment that, I think, again, this is a big issue in our neck of the woods because it's our neck of the woods, I mean, and our situation, but, there's a strong degree of expectation that this is going to be a very big issue, this legislative session, specifically because of the Supreme Court decision leading people in a certain direction as a potential solution. And so it's gonna be a hot topic is just our expectation. That's one of the reasons we are a bit exercised about potential outcomes.
I am, so as I'm reflecting on the discussion, trying to figure out a path forward here, I'm leaning towards continuing the discussion in December. But it was the comment that Diane just had. It's the education piece of things that I think is important for this body, and hearing the different perspectives. And I think to some extent, for Jim and David, you guys are in the thick of it, and it's certainly a perspective. And I'm not sure that everyone else here around the table might be fully, in tune with that and aware of it. Likewise, though, I think that there are also perspectives from other people from around the state that maybe you guys can't or haven't considered as well, right? And so I'm thinking that to continue the discussion in December, primarily focused on education for board members, might be the most reasonable step forward at this point. I'm not inclined to, if we wanted to, we could bring it up to a vote tonight. If you wanted to authorize, that those were the talking points that the executive director would be left with, I don't think it will succeed. And so that's why I think that, continuing discussion in December is a better way to approach this.
Can I say something?
Yes. Okay. Go ahead, David, and then I'll go to Mark.
We are representing our area, but we do think about the state. I am worried about public education in Vermont and in the country. And I think it starts in the grassroots. So I suggest that if we focus this discussion, we listen to what Colleen said, and we try to figure out what the VSBA advocacy position really should be on this. And two, then we listen to Mark's point and look at the rules and regulations that should be relaxed, that are preventing all schools, public schools and private schools, from achieving their greatest potential in educating our children. Our goal is to educate our children to the best of our ability. So an advocacy position, you should know what you're going to be saying when you're asked questions. So you do need guidance. We're not micromanaging at all. We're giving you a general sense of what the position should be. And maybe Mark's point is the best way to go, is to look at some of the things that can be relaxed.
Okay, Mark Clough, go ahead.
I am in a district that has 2 historical independent schools, which are very important to our systems. And I have been in other meetings with the headmaster and headmistress of each of them individually, and just kind of mentioned where we'd come to. And maybe a political response. They both said they welcomed it. I think they see it as a good political move for them because of everything else that's going on around standards and stuff, that they need to be at the table. They want it to be reasonable. And but they say, yeah, accountability, that's fair. We get the money. So anyway, probably a political response. And then my second point is, I know we passed this resolution and I felt really good about it. And then I thought, are we going to give this to the education committee in the House and say, hey, listen, here's where we're coming from. Can you work on this and get some information from other members and decide what this should look like? Or does Sue feel like we've got to do a little more specifics around it? I thought it was a great resolution and something to give to the legislature to start mulling over. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. What I will add is that while there is a lot of focus on the resolution that was just passed, what I sent to you all in email we have more than one resolution on this topic, right? And so I think it's those combined resolutions that we would turn to when we were requested for testimony in the legislature. Quite frequently, we're asked to provide testimony in response to something. That usually doesn't happen until the something has been developed, right? And so to have these discussions at this point, you know, I think to a point that was made earlier, from Mark, right, constrains, I think, in some regards, our ability to be able to react to what's eventually going to come forward. And you guys know, I mean, we've all been through this before. What shows up on day one is not what we see on the last day of the session. Things go through a lot of changes, a lot of loops, a lot of modifications. And part of, I think, the beauty of the system that we have with the resolutions is it provides guidance, but not explicit direction, right? It gives us the flexibility and the freedom that we need as an organization to remain nimble, to be able to respond to things as they come up, and to have the best interest of all school board members at heart. You know, I think that, I mean, the resolution process is there. It has survived over multiple years. It's a reasonable way of getting things done. I have a slight concern about going back and constraining. I think in some regards, board members might feel that we are constraining the resolution that was passed. And I think that then sends a bad message to membership as to what the VSBA does with a resolution after the membership has agreed to it. All that being said, it is 7:39. I'm going to bring this discussion forward to December, so you all can gear up and plan for continued discussion about this. I just want to thank you, David, for bringing it forward. Thank you for all of those that participated in the discussion, for being civil and cordial about this. We all need to be able to have those discussions and still get along at the end of the day. And so I appreciate the tenor that everybody brought to the table on this.
Can I just take and ask for the December?
Yes.
I think one of the pieces I'm missing, I think was mentioned over here, is what specific regulations or rules are the independent schools have problems with? I don't know what they are. So what, you can give some examples of what they're concerned with. That would give us an idea. Is do they just not like change? Or as Mark S. was saying, are these regulations that maybe no school should have, and we should be looking at that? So if I could have a better understanding of what it is that the independents are having a problem with, it would make my life a little easier.
Okay, thanks for that. Jim, can I turn to you for the first quarter treasurer's report?
Sure, shouldn't take any more than an hour.
Yeah. You guys want to reconsider who you voted in for treasurer? Yeah, really.
Okay, you're it.
You know, I will, try.
Made it sure again. Basically, you know, there's a good report there. Things are in good shape. We've, you know, as pointed out, you know, financially, we look in good shape. We've got, we're still owed a few dollars of dues. We're still chasing down, but other than that, things are pretty much on track on the revenue side. We're basically at budget for the year, and expenses we're a little bit under at this point. So, you know, things are looking good. The FDA searches have been busier than expected. The board development as well, which are really good things. The services that VSBA can bring to individual districts for, you know, board development. I think that my district needs to use a little bit more, by the way. We've decided, but unfortunately, a lot of searches as well. So those are good things that are running a little bit hot. But other than that, I'm happy to take any questions on anything in those forward.
Any questions for Jim, our treasurer? I got one question.
Jim,
Yeah.
just what's driving the pretty substantial increase in the accounts receivable compared to
That's the dues that have to pay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And is that was there, refresh my memory, so was there change in timing when the dues were paid?
Well, we did make a change in the financial policies to make it a date certain. It used to be sort of a funky, sort of not as clear. It's been made a lot clearer, which makes it real clear that everybody should be paying. I don't think we're a strong arm sort of organization. We haven't threatened anybody kneecaps.
Made a phone call today, though.
She's the tough here.
And actually,
You can be confident.
since that report, the time that I did that report, there were 6 districts that hadn't paid, now there's only 3. So they've come in since then, and the other 3 are planning on, they just haven't come through yet.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's getting weird. I used to do credit risk and the school districts are a pretty good risk for, we can get payment from them. They should be good for it.
Carrie didn't tell you those 3 districts that just filed VHI claims because they got broken kneecaps. But it's all good. We got our money. Any other questions for Jim on the treasurer's report? All right, seeing none, then we're gonna move on to appointment of employer commissioner. So good news, folks. Well, first the bad news. Elizabeth Fitzgerald has decided to step down from the employer commissioners group. We certainly, her term expired.
Yes.
She, sorry, decided to step down. She decided not to re-up for another 6 years.
Yeah.
Sounds so appealing when you say it that way. And I want to thank her for all the work she did with that group. It's a lot of work. The good news is there's somebody sitting right next to me, A, that knows that it's a lot of work, but B, is willing to take on that position. So Mark is currently serving as one of our alternates. If board members recall, right, so a few months ago, we had Kim Farnham move up from an alternate to take Laura Soria's position, and she stepped down. Yes.
Yeah.
The good news is we've got another person already fully trained, ready to go, ready to step in without missing a beat. And I'm just looking to the board this evening if they would be willing to appoint Mark Koenig as. Oh my God,
Well, I'm not taking over the chair role.
That is left up to the commission. All right. Jim Salzgiver made a motion to appoint Mark Koenig as an employer commissioner. I see I have a couple of hands up online. Were those hands for a second, or did you want to have a discussion or make another motion, or?
I just, it's Suzanne, and I just had a question. I didn't hear. You had said something about Elizabeth retiring because her term was over. Then you mentioned something about Kim. And so it all kind of blurred together because your voice dropped, so I couldn't hear what you said.
Sorry, so the employer commissioners had 2 positions that were considered alternate positions on that commission. Those alternate positions were held by Kim Farnham and Mark Koenig. When Laura Sories decided to step off of the commission, the VSBA board then appointed Kim Farnham to fill her position, which then made, there was now a single alternate position open that we will still need to address. And now with Elizabeth Fitzgerald deciding not to seek another term, I am recommending that Mark Koenig then be moved from the alternate position to a permanent sitting member on that commission. And now we will then, at some point in the future, need to select 2 alternates to backfill those 2 positions from Kim and Mark. Does that make
Great,
sense?
thank you for saying that. I was just so soft, I couldn't understand what you were saying.
All right. Soft is not usually something that I am used to. I appreciate that. And there you go. All right, so we had a motion from Jim. I think Mark Schauber was the second.
No, Tara.
It was Tara. I am sorry. Any discussion? All right, yes. All right, everybody in favor of Mark Koenig as an employer commissioner, please raise your hand, leave it up.
And I'll abstain.
Raise it, I get to say it's unanimous. God damn it. All right. Gary, it's easier for them to. All right, yes.
there was a conversation that, I mean, Elizabeth's 6-year term is done.
Right.
What about the rest of us? Yeah.
Yeah, I need to look at the past minute to figure out the next one, and I'll do that.
Sure. I think the first group was all appointed at the same time.
But they were
Very
appointed
Oh, did you?
staggered.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nobody remembers one.
Moving on to the VSBA strategic plan monitoring report and Sue.
okay, I have some things to highlight. We have had a lot of great activity going on. Of course, we had our annual conference in October and had very good attendance. We want to improve it, of course, and we have a goal for that. But we had good attendance, and it was a really fantastic keynote speaker. I wanted to just, it's in this card, but that we sent to Kay, and if people haven't signed this, please sign it before you leave. This is a card for Kay Douglas, our keynote speaker. But these are some of the comments that we have in the survey that we did on the conference, on her part of the conference. Bravo, bravo, loved every minute. She was outstanding, one of the best I have ever heard. Boy, is she good. This will be a tough act to follow. Her message was very powerful. She was straightforward, and that is what we needed. So, yeah, there a lot of great comments about Kay, but also about other aspects of the conference as well. And you'll see in your packet that there's a little bit of a write-up about the survey that we did on the conference. So you can take a look at that. There's also a write-up in your packet with information about the regional meetings. So I encourage you to look at that as well. You've already talked about this, but I just wanted to really thank the Governance Standards Task Force for all of their work, and Mark and Phil for the work with them. That was a lot of work in a short amount of time, and it was really great to see school board members from all the different regions coming together and doing that work together. Wanted to let you know that Secretary French has invited me to attend a special invitation only workshop on impacting student achievement through effective school board governance. It's being hosted by the Council of Chief State School Officers in collaboration with the Education Commission of the state. The workshop is going to build on innovative state and local governance work, making an impact in a number of states, including North Dakota and Texas. And it's taking place the end of November in San Diego. And the costs of the trip, except for the flight, are going to be covered by the Council of Chief State School Officers. So, and there's 16, they're allowing 16 states to participate. So it's really an honor that Vermont gets to participate in this. And I am looking forward to that. And also wanted to highlight the tremendous amount of work that Sandra has done with our policy team to get the review and update of our model policy manual. A lot of work has been done on that, and almost all of our required policies and many of our recommended model policies have been either reviewed or revised within the past 4 years, which is really an accomplishment because there are so many of them, and there's a lot of work that goes into each review and revision, and quite a process. So thank you very much to Sandra. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight is that yesterday and the day before, the whole VSBA staff, along with a bunch of other education leaders and stakeholders, and Sandra's going to give you some more details on this, attended a 2-day convening on leading for equity, which is, it was facilitated by the Arizona School Boards Association. And we walked through a well-developed school board curriculum, which can be customized for use in Vermont. And a 3rd day of training is going to be held on November 18th for a smaller group of individuals who will become licensed to use those materials for training with school boards. So I'm going to turn it over to Sandra so she can talk a little bit more about it, because she really played a key role in pulling all of this together for us.
So some of you might remember this, a couple of years ago, the Arizona School Boards Association walked our board through the curriculum, so maybe you've seen it. And the goal on Monday and Tuesday was to walk through the curriculum with a list of stakeholders that I'm gonna read to you, the associations and organizations they represented, because I don't know if I've ever organized an event where all but one person came, dedicated 2 full days to sit in a room with us. And this is so important, clearly, to our stakeholders that they were all in the room with us, working with us. And yeah, it was just really powerful. It was. So I wanted to tell you, and I'll just read not names, but the organizations that they represented. Of course, all of our staff, and then Superintendent's Association, Principals Association, curriculum leaders, special education administrators, Education Justice Coalition, Agency of Ed, the Governor's Office of Racial Equity, Act One Working Group, and also the Human Rights Commission, the Vermont Education Equity Collaborative, which is a new group forming, the NEA, Outright Vermont, Disability Law Project, and State Board of Ed. Just incredible group of people sitting together, thinking and learning about how can we support our school boards across the state and ultimately our students. So the framework, the purpose of the framework is to stimulate discussion and action among public education leaders with the ultimate goal of ensuring personal and social circumstances of students, such as race, gender, ability, ethnic origin, economic circumstances, or family background are not obstacles to them when it comes to achieving their educational potential. And so, as Sue mentioned, a few of us are now going to go through the 3rd day of training, become licensed trainers, which will give us access to the materials and all the slides. A lot of it is developed, thank goodness, because that's going to really let us move faster than we could have otherwise. And the workbook will be customized to Vermont. So we're going to go through a process of thinking about language that might be different in Vermont than Arizona, thinking about images that will represent Vermont, and of course our introduction and our purpose to the work. So we've got some work ahead. We have a couple equity consultants that are ready to go. So we're going to have a new resource for school boards very soon.
And Flora was there as well, so I don't know if she might want to say a few words about it.
Yeah, well, basically, it was so nice to have all of the different, there was some diversity, but mostly diversity is not, and having to really hear the same thing, and common equity, and the journey together, and have actually see the similarities. I think it was really nice to not just the similarity, just see how we are aligned in the rules. And the governance standards came up at the conversation, the pre-K, everything, it just really resonated with the group. And just to see especially the presenters were really moved by the ability to put this group together and how they worked together for 2 days. And there was just very few breaks. And to have just really good, the way that they made us all talk to each other and just prioritize equity and our cultural awareness, the things that maybe not all were familiar with, but basically have been working towards. So it was really, I was excited mostly because of education, and they have a slide in there, it's about relationships too. And we definitely created those relationships with our partners.
That was the end of my report.
I'm still amazed at what you guys get done every month. It's incredible. So thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Phil, even though you can't hear us. Yeah, I don't think, especially for these new board members, you're not going to meet another desk like this that gets as much done as this one does. It's incredible. So thank you so much for all the work that you do. Last item, gang. Well, next to last, consent agenda, which is just the September minutes and then also the minutes from that October special meeting that we had. I will look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Nancy Russell. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Tara Sweet. Any discussion? No. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please raise your hand and leave it up.
Looks to be unanimous.
Mark Clough, say yes. Say yes. Say yes.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
We want to, yeah.
Any-
May we,
What's that?
What's that mean?
may we. I live near the Canadian border too.
Okay. If anything comes up, if any board members want anything on the agenda, as always, just reach out. Otherwise, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, get up and leave. Look at the clock.
Perfect.
Thank you all.
Here's your mileage sheets.
Yes, give them to me.
Essentially.
I definitely restrict.
Thank you, Zoomers.
Thanks so much. Thank you, thank you.
Bye.